Well, here we go. We are on. Let somebody know we're on. It's almost time for Spirit in Mind. And we look forward to today's discussion. Wonderful. We come to you every Saturday, this time of conversation, which is so critical, especially during this time of battling the pandemic. So, um, what do you think, Dr. Shepard?
Yeah, good morning. Just about to be afternoon, everyone. And absolutely, it's good to be with you all another Saturday. And thank you all for those who have been joining in. And again, the discussion continues, so timely. We also want to wish all the mothers out there a happy Mother's Day this weekend, even though most of us are still in stay at home, shelter in place orders. That it's still Mother's Day weekend and they should be celebrated. And even with this discussion today, we'll talk about how the best way we can even celebrate those safely who should be celebrated. So, yes, welcome. Please share, please like. We continue to get a fair number of viewers, so continue to um, let those people know that we're here on Saturdays at 12 noon to talk. And please also write comments and questions. If there's something that you want us to answer in particular during this time, let us know. And we'll do our best to provide at least a solid answer. And if not, we'll get back to you.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, please and please share this and share this time of sharing. Share this broadcast. Let somebody know we were inspired to do this. We believe that God is a God of purpose, and He wants that we would prosper and be in good health in all things. So that includes our mental health, our spiritual health. And so let somebody know. I was grateful, Dr. Shepard. I read some comments on a YouTube channel, and Dr. Todd. I'm grateful for Todd, who wrote in and said the content here is amazing. You guys, this needs to be heard and seen. And so I'm in agreement with Todd and what he wrote today, just a few weeks
Thank
ago.
you.
We look forward to your dialogue, your interaction, your questions. Help us to know where you are, and then we can, as Dr. Shepard said, come up with at least a solid answer. So it's time for Spirit in Mind, and we're grateful. Let's get started in a minute. Well, good afternoon and welcome again. Great day. And welcome to Spirit in Mind, where we are committed to the critical collaboration of ministry and mental health, or the ministry of mental health. This is Bishop Guy Robinson. I'm grateful, as always, to have my ministerial colleague and psychiatrist, Dr. Jonathan Shepard, coming to you to continue our discussion. All right, Dr. Shepard, how you doing today? Greet the people, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Bishop. It is good to be here. I'm glad to be alive. I'm feeling good this morning, this afternoon now, and just so grateful that everyone is here joining us, whether you are live or whether you are listening to us after we have finished today. So, thank you.
Yes, yes. Again, thank you for being with us. And listen, your dialogue and engagement is wonderful. And so, if you see me looking down for a minute, I'm fully engaged. But we're engaged with you also. I'm looking at your comments, your reflections, your observations, because we want to be in tune with you. And so, as questions come up or responses, we can be on top of it. So anyway, we've been dealing with this general theme, an umbrella theme of the road to recovery. And Today we want to make a specific emphasis on the idea of making decisions during turbulent times. And indeed, these are turbulent times. Of course, we've been battling the corona virus pandemic for about 8 weeks now in these United States. And we're still praying for and with persons who have lost friends and family. We're also praying for persons who have lost jobs and businesses that have felt the impact of this virus and pandemic. And of course, we're praying for and with essential workers. That includes medical personnel, it includes firefighters, police, first responders, funeral service providers, military personnel, market workers, postal service providers, gas station attendants, sanitation workers, mental health professionals, and pastors. In the kingdom, we enlarge that list a little bit beyond what Caesar has noted. Amen. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's, is what Jesus said. And so in the kingdom, we recognize and appreciate the work of pastors as well. Now, the road to recovery is also the name of the plan here in the state of Maryland. We know we have persons watching from different places. But in the state of Maryland, the plan is called the Road to Recovery to gradually ease shelter in place orders that were enacted by the state of Maryland in efforts to stop the spread of the coronavirus. And now the word recovery itself, Dr. Shepard, I was thinking has therapeutic implications. The very word recovery, it speaks of an implied or inherent encounter with a crisis event. Recovery says that there's been trauma. Recovery says that there also is an opportunity for a healthy transformation. But recovery is a destination. Thus, the title is The Road to Recovery, which also means that there is a journey. So there is a journey, a path, or a road to recovery. And the journey is where critical decisions are made. Our decisions can affect where we end up on the journey, our destination. So on the road to recovery, that's what I just kind of want to submit to you as an abstract to kick us off today, is that on the road to recovery, decisions matter. And sometimes on the path to recovery, it gets a little turbulent. It gets bumpy. It gets rocky. Decisions matter, and decisions can expedite, delay, or stagnate the recovery process. You know, I was thinking as we were preparing for this, everyone, I was thinking that even indecision is a decision. Even indecisiveness is a decision to be stagnant. So today we want to talk about the power of decisions on the road to recovery. And so, Dr. Shepard, what do you think? That's just my musings as we were praying and discussing this. What was a little bit of your inspiration?
Yeah, Bishop, I'm just going to kind of piggyback off of you. Is that I really was hearing how you just said, I'm getting a little bit of echo. That's why I'm kind of hesitating here. Is that as you are on this journey to recovery, is that you're going to have different places where you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to make a stance on how you be able to get to the place that you want to get to. So what is that saying? In this, for this pandemic, we're looking for this to come to an end or some type of resolution. And what I'm afraid of is that people want a resolution too fast. Yes, I would love for this to be over tomorrow, but realistically, and the way in which things are panning out, we're going to be stuck in this for a while. And I know people don't like it when I say that, but when you look at the different scenarios, and again, I do my research. I am a scientist, I am a faith believer, but I'm also a scientist too. And so when I was looking at the different scenarios, there's 2 out of 3 scenarios that is being proposed here. And those 2 scenarios really do not show this pandemic ending until 2021, 2022. There's only one that can kind of forecast possibly ending at the end of this year. What is that telling me? It's telling me that this journey that we're on right now to recovery is going to take longer than what most of us would like. And we have to learn how to be able to have patience, how to be able to endure, how to be able to find ways to keep ourselves encouraged, ways to be able to keep ourselves uplifted as we go through this journey. You know, I think about it, even as I'm just talking here right now, I think about even the different journeys that I had to go through, even when I got to where I am as a physician. A lot of us like, the title. A lot of us like the hoopla about being in leadership and having certain titles, but they have no clue about the journey that it took to get to where that person is. And as I think about it, there was several different times when I said, I'm done. I'll quit. The financial resources alone that were required to be able to go through this journey was quite um, overwhelming. But thank God that I held on to the journey. And so I digress just a little bit there because I want people to know that in this time right now, and this is really the sentiments of my heart, we have to be making decisions that are going to propel us to a higher level than where we are right now during this pandemic. When you come out of this pandemic, you should not be the same. Even if you look different, and I know a lot of us look different because we can't get our hair cut, we can't get our hair done, and your nails and all this. On the outward appearance, you may look different, but there should be a difference inside of you when you leave out of this stay-at-home shelter in place. You should be stronger for those who are faith believers. You should be stronger in helping those to become faith believers. There should be something that you are studying. You should be smarter. You should be more intellectually astute. So, and I just heard somebody again. Because I see people and I can only imagine somebody said, well, Shepherd, I might be a little bit bigger. Because I've been eating so much. Yeah, I know that might be on your appearance, but hopefully you should be a little bit healthier mentally and physically. I know it might be a little bit more difficult, but yeah. So Bishop, those are just some of my sentiments as to this topic today.
That's powerful because you bring up some interesting, and of course, you said all of us want to get to the destination. So the destination isn't the controversy. It seems as if the turbulence is in the journey. We all want to arrive at this place of recovery, the return to some sense of normalcy, however that is defined. But that seems to be the common. Everybody wants to get to the same place, it seems, or most people. But during the journey is where we're experiencing. As you were talking, I was thinking about some of the Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief and the denial and the anger and the bargaining and all of those reactions that we have, and all those things can affect our decisions during this part. So we want to talk about making decisions during these turbulent times. And there's some profound theories on the psychology of decision making. We won't nerd out on you too much with that. But since this is spirit in mind, let's begin with a theology of decision making that is consistent with our thematic verse. That is 1 Thessalonians 5:23. That says, now may the very God of peace sanctify you wholly, your spirit, soul, and body, your pneuma, suke, soma, spirit, soul, and body be preserved. And so with that in mind, I want to submit that we consider in these categories, making spiritual decisions. There are spiritual decisions, or by that, decisions led by prayer and supplication, or as the scriptures say, as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the children of God, is what Paul said in Romans. So there are spiritual decisions led by our spiritual consciousness. And then there are soulful decisions, going by that Thessalonians category from the word suke, which translates to psyche in the German, to psychology in our vernacular here in the States. But there are soulful decisions, which, when the Bible speaks of the soul, it means the realm of the mind, will, and emotions. And that's a powerful grouping there, because I would submit, and we can get into that later, they're not always in agreement. The mind, the will, and the emotions. And then there
Absolutely.
are bodily decisions being led by or involving or considering physical attachments, cravings, needs, and or urges of the body. And so these three realms can affect our decisions, or we could categorize, for the sake of this discussion, decisions in those categories on the theological side. And of course, again, as I said, when you get to the soul realm, that's where it really, or the psyche realm, the psychological realm, it really gets
Yeah.
interesting. Psychology suggests that two-track decision-making process. There are intuitive that we instantly kind of governed by emotions, and instinct, if you will, limited information, but just a gut reaction, if you will. So there are intuitive decisions, and then there are rational decisions, meaning that information is gathered, options are weighed, compares cost and analysis and benefits, and even consults others to make deliberate decisions. And so these are just some of the areas, but and these are my reflections on the idea. But as we talk about making want to address.
Say it one more time. You broke up there. I didn't.
So
I,
what are
I didn't hear
some
the lead in.
decisions we have to make? What are some decisions we have to make in these turbulent times? They're on so many
Absolutely.
levels: and national decisions, state decisions,
Absolutely.
gubernatorial decisions, and then household decisions. So, would you help us with some of the
Absolutely.
decisions that we may have to consider?
Absolutely. So, there's just some, just real practical. Do I wear a mask when I go outside? That's been a hot topic. Do I wear a mask? Do I follow the arrows that are in the stores now that tell me to walk down the aisle this way? And am I being rebellious if I don't walk down the aisle that way? Do I go to my job? I wrote down some of these decisions. Do I go back to my job, or do I continue to work at home? That is a major decision that people are asking right now. Do I go out to the doctor? One of the things real quickly here that troubled me even just a few weeks ago is that the Baltimore Sun talked about how there was a decrease in the number of heart attacks and strokes and a few other medical conditions. And I said, well, wait a minute, that can't be right. And sure enough, there was a qualifier. The reason why they've seen a decrease is because the people are scared to leave out their homes. The number of heart attacks has not decreased. The number of strokes has not decreased. It's just people do not want to go to the hospital to be assessed. And so that's even a decision that people have to make. Do I leave my home when I know that something's not right?
Wow.
Do I attend church service when the doors are back open? And the doors will open. I do believe that. And then, some people are like, well, I'm loving it here at home. I can sit here at home and view the service. So that has to be a question that people have to be able to wrestle within their minds. Then election season, you just alluded to this, Bishop Robinson. Who do I vote for? This is 2020, and we're in the midst of a mayoral race here in Baltimore. We also are in the midst of a national election for president. And you might say, well, I don't like any of the candidates. I haven't had a chance to really meet them, because most of the things that you're seeing right now is just via television, because you're not able to go out into the different forums and we're not able to hold the different debates and things like that because of the protective orders that are in place. So all these are decisions that people are making even right now. Here's the one of the mental aspects that really I'm not sure how much we'll get into even today, but these things need to be taken into consideration when you're making decisions. Anxiety. Anxiety will cause you to make decisions that you're not prepared to make. It'll cause you to rush. It'll cause you to do things before you're even ready to do it. Anger. Oh man. How many of you all out there have made a decision because you were angry? And then you went back to say, wow, why did I make that decision? And because you found yourself in a state of rage, a state of anger. There's different emotions, so
Yeah.
we have to be aware that fear, anger, depression, anxiety. I'll say this: that even on CNN recently, and I'm not just promoting certain shows. As you see, I'm trying to be well balanced, but they did a poll as to what were some of the emotions behind people or reasons why people wouldn't wear a mask. And two big things came up: fear and rebellion. Fear, that really didn't make too much sense to me as to why people were fearful to wear a mask. But honestly, as a black man, I can understand that if you want to go there with it, because when I go into a store, I'm already portrayed as a bad person, and then I put a mask on my face, and now it's even worse. So as a black man, I can understand that. So for black people, I get that for fear. But also this thing about rebellion, about people not telling me what to do. We don't want anybody to tell us what to do. You can't tell me to do this. And so because you told me to wear a mask, I'm not going to wear a mask. So these two things are fueling some of these reasons why people are making certain decisions. And here's the thing is, and then I'll end, is that when you choose not to abide by these guidelines, you not only, put yourself at risk, you're putting me at risk. And so you have to be careful that your emotions do not allow you to make selfish decisions that could really impact, tremendously impact someone else's life.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. First of all, thank you so many for chiming in today. We do see you. Thank you, Edward Austin. Thank you for seizing this time to learn and embrace this change. Praying for you and your barber profession. Thank you, Stephen Jefferson. Thank you, Anthony Rhodes, Deacon Anthony Rhodes. Thank you, Louise Nichols. Thank you, so many who are chiming in from various areas of the country. Literally, we are grateful for you today. May we also say, but Dr. Shepard, you raised something major when you talked about this discussion worthy. It's really have to talk about this because it's not just a knee-jerk reaction in this season, that it feels real, that all these fight and flight things, and what you mentioned with fear and rebellion being the top two, that's a fascinating study because that's fight or flight. And that has somatic things. So you feel the blood rushing, you feel the adrenaline rushing, and there's a need for catharsis. But then when we think about it, and here's the thought I got as you were sharing this idea of you mentioned being selfish. I want to juxtapose that with freedom because you hear a lot of discussion about that. And freedom is a word. I teach blessed to teach logic as a on campus, but freedom is one of those interesting words that people use but don't always have the same definition, because freedom really means free and domain, free dominion. It means free with boundaries, because we live in community. So the moment that my freedom imposes on someone else's freedom, then I'm no longer acting in
Mm,
freedom, but I'm acting in rebellion or in anarchy. And so these things have to be considered because, of
wow,
course, I have a personal right not to wear a mask, but then there's the consideration of what that decision may impose on other people's freedoms to have health and well-being. And so I'm not pushing either
absolutely,
one. We're not here for the philosophical discussion, but it does mean that when you talk about those two tracks, the intuitive decision making and the rational decision making, the rational decision making has to gather all of this data. It's not just about me. Yes, I do have individual rights, but part of my individual well being is that I'm also a social being. And so that very term, social
absolutely,
individuals, has some tension in it. And so we live in a country that emphasizes individualism and independence, and that has its place, but we are also interdependent, which is the whole idea of the
absolutely.
United States. Usually you think of a state as a sovereign nation, but these are United States. And so it's the idea that we are individuals, but we are also social individuals, which means I have to think about not just me, but my family, grandmother who lives with me, or
Mm-hmm,
my mom who's in
mm-hmm,
the most vulnerable demographic, the supermarket,
mm-hmm,
how that could be. All these things have to be factored in. Am I what they call a super spreader in epidemiology? Do I have the potential to infect
mm-hmm.
others on a mass or large scale? All these things have to be put in the mix because essentially it's not just about us. If I'm hearing you,
Absolutely,
well, Dr. Shepard.
absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. It's not just about us. We rely upon other people. We've learned that through the word. We've learned that through hopefully our just living as human beings on this earth. That we're not to be isolated individuals, which is why this time has been so hard for many of us because we have not been able to touch. God gave us five senses, and the ability to touch is very powerful. I believe I spoke about this before. Just the inability not to be able to touch is just been hard on us, and we're not to live like that. I wanna bring up something too that for those people who are out there right now, and you might say, Dr. Shepard, Bishop Robinson, I'm in the middle of making a decision right now, and I just don't know what to do. Still, it is time for you to make a decision. And there is some hope too. I was studying the story of Ruth earlier this week in Ruth chapter 1, and they came up upon a decision that had to be made when Naomi and her two sisters, daughter-in-laws, Ruth and Orpah, had all lost their husbands, and they had to make a decision as to whether or not were they going to go back with Naomi to where famine was, or were they going to go back to their homeland in Moab? And so, Ruth decided to stay with Naomi. We know that, but Orpah decided to go back home, and you know, you got to think about it. I don't want to throw Orpah under the bus, but she had to make the best decision that was made for her at the time. And that's how we are right now. We have to make some decisions right now that are very crucial. I was just reading, people are deciding right now where to either to pay their bills or to buy food because of the financial economic crisis that we're in. These are decisions that we have to make. And what I want to let you all know is that even if you don't make the best decision right now, that may not have the best outcome, if you are a faith believer, God is still able to turn those decisions around and help them to work out for your good. So we want to let you know that when you're making the decisions today, that all these different things are going to come and try to turn you to whatever pathway that is, and you may end up making some decisions that you later regret. That may happen, but we want to let you know that God still understands. We understand because if I pull up the resume on my life, there's some decisions that I have made that I look back and say, "Oh, I shouldn't have made that decision." You know, But I thank God that He knows how to be able to turn some bad decisions over into some ones that have worked out, as the scripture says, for my good. So want to make sure that people are aware of that today.
That's wow. That's important. That's important. You got my mind and spirit leaping here. That's important because here's what I hear. Some of us can become stagnant because we are afraid of making a mistake, and that can stagnate decision making. And sometimes we have to gather the best information we have, make the best informed decision with the best intentions, and then that's where grace steps in. As Dr. Shepard said, all of us have some imperfections on our resume, and then grace kind of kicks in there, and so cut yourself some slack. To some of us who may be more towards the worrisome personality type. And I want to get to some of the things that you're mentioning on this decision, on the discussion line. So, but Dr. Shepard has just hit something. I feel something moving there. But listen, I want to give you what I would suggest that you consider. Again, these are just considerations. These are not official consultations, but they are considerations that you would perhaps might find helpful as you are making decisions in turbulent times. I wrote them. I tried to put them in 4 C words, and I'll make them available as well in another forum. But catharsis, consultation, consider the contrary, and commit. I'll say that again: catharsis, consultation, consider the contrary, and commit. Here are the 4. And by catharsis, I mean this: when you have to make decisions in critical times or turbulent times, write down your knee-jerk reactions. Write down what you're thinking about doing, because there is a need for catharsis. You got all the adrenaline running, and you feel like, why I oughta. And there is a way that seemeth right, but that's not always good. But you still need to get it out. So write it down in a personal journal. Now, that may sound nerdy, but consider this. One of the concerns that you have to be mindful of, and even in social media forums, and we're grateful for forums like this, but it's a tool that can be used for good or bad. But one of the concerns is that your social media account gives you access to instant catharsis without consideration. You can get it all out.
Wow.
Everything in you is saying you need to post your status. Everything in you, your body, your physiological reactions are saying do something, fight or flight. I'm not giving you this adrenaline for nothing. Do something. And then you go and post something that you end up regretting having not thought it through. So write it in a journal. That's the catharsis. Get it out. The bishop in me is saying, still don't underestimate the prayer closet. Take everything to him there. Sometimes we write out what we need to pray about. And that means just pour out your heart. It's called a lament in the book of Psalms. It means I just need to get this off of me because I feel like, look how David talks. I feel like destroying all my enemies. I feel like just get that out. That's the catharsis part. And then go back and look at it later. Read your catharsis journal and say, whoa, that was crazy. Or, whoa, this is still a good idea. See if you still feel like posting what you feel like posting 3 hours later. See if it's still it's still relevant. So if you don't just become a victim of emotionalism. Then so catharsis. Secondly is consultation. The second C is consultation. Seek the opinion of a confidant, an accountability partner, a mentor. Tell them this is what I'm thinking about doing. Man, she said this to me, and this is what I'm thinking about doing. He did that, and that's what I'm thinking about doing. Have someone you can talk to, because the mind, and Dr. Shepard can talk more about this, but the mind is capable of wonderful creativity, but it's also capable of what the Bible calls vain imaginations. Why did the people imagine? And wicked imaginations. So have a consultation that you could talk to. a pastor, a peer, a mental health professional. So these are the thoughts and ruminations I'm having. So there's catharsis, then there's consultation, then there's consider the contrary, which means give thought to the exact opposite reaction of your initial reaction and think about what that would do. I feel like cussing them out. But what if I prayed for them? That's considered the exact opposite and think about what that would do. And then finally, after catharsis, consultation, and considering the contrary, make a commitment, which means make a decision, being mindful that indecision still a decision to be stagnant. And so they're just the four C's I wanted to put for you for making decisions in turbulent times. Catharsis, okay, you need to get it out, but that doesn't mean you need to get it out on somebody. That doesn't mean you need to get it out publicly on the world wide web. It just means you need to get it out. You're having bodily reactions. But then catharsis, consultation, talk to somebody. And if after doing all that, you still feel, and of course, this takes a minute to say, but the more you do it, the more instinctive it will become, and the less time it will take to do that. So they're just my four reflections on dealing with things in turbulent times. Dr. Shepherd, I want to answer a few questions, but first, Dr. Shepherd, please feel free chime in, fix, add, redact as you are led.
Oh no, I mean that's powerful. That's powerful. That's powerful, Bishop. So if someone else hears that at a later time, know, know that I got it from Bishop Robinson, because that's good how you put that. What I will do, I will just tag on to it. How to plan or make decisions in a crisis. You want to make sure that you have planned ahead. And what somebody may say, well, Shepherd, why would you say plan ahead when I'm already in the crisis? Because another crisis is coming. That's why. Even if this ended tomorrow, even if the COVID-19 pandemic ended tomorrow, there's still another crisis that's going to occur because we are human beings, and in this life, we will suffer persecution. We're going to suffer trouble. The scripture makes that plain and clear. There's nobody walking around here without any type of trouble. So we need to make sure that we're planning ahead. It's always best to think ahead. What do you need to do in case of trouble, in case of a major decision? That's why insurance is in place. That's why we need to be thinking financially, have things saved up, not spending all of our money. This is an excellent time to be saving money right now. We're not driving. We're not going many places. I was laughing. I was looking at one of my friends. She's been buying up stuff on Amazon or at Amazon.com. I'm like, come on now. This just because you can't go out to the store doesn't mean you got to buy up everything online now. Again, we joke back and forth, but this is the time for you to be saving, because I guarantee you another crisis is going to occur. So you need to be able to plan ahead. Number two, consistency and structure. So with those things that Bishop just outlined, we want to make sure that we are doing our best to be consistent. Don't just utilize those four C's for one particular event and one particular incident and say, well, I did it that one time. Yay. And then don't do it again. We have to develop consistency and structure. That is what's going to help us when we're going through crises. I am so blessed to see how many pastors and how many leaders are going forth every single week consistently before their congregations. And I tell you, that's one of the major reasons I believe that people continue to watch. That's why people continue to give, because they are getting a consistent message. Even in the middle of crisis, consistency and structure is what's needed. And then the last one is to build your faith through prayer, fasting, and reading your word. There's no other substitute for that. You want to make sure that while you're in place, this should be an increased time for you to build your time, that you're fasting, praying, and reading your Bible, so that you can grow spiritually, and also as you're reading is going to help you intellectually, and you be able to really dissect and understand better just the Word of God. The Word of God is just powerful by itself, and so those things will help you even in the middle of a crisis.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Listen, so we've extended a little bit, but I want to be true to our word and answer a couple. Stephen asked this question: while indecision can certainly be a choice, what's the balance between, or the distinction between being indecisive versus waiting on God before moving and standing still? I would say that's a great question. What's the difference between being indecisive and stagnant and waiting on God? I would instinctively answer that from my part to say that anxiety, the state of mind, makes all the difference in the world. If while you are standing still,
Mm,
it's because you are ruminating over the tragedy of making a mistake and I'm so scared of moving forward. If that fear is consuming you, and actually and or you're battling the feelings of grief. Here it is, because every decision, every yes is also a no. Every time I decide to go left, I also have to
mm,
forsake and vice versa. And sometimes we are anxious and in anticipatory grief of having to experience the necessary losses, as Judah Voice calls them, the things we have to give up to grow up. And so sometimes to avoid the loss, we get anxious because every time when I became a man, when I became an adult, I put away childish things. That's why we sometimes cry at commencements. In one sense, we know we're moving forward, but in another sense, we know we got to let go of something. And so when that anxiety of worrying about what I'm going to let go, the anxiety to avoid having the closure of certain seasons, the anxiety is making us take the safe route, what we think is by just doing nothing. When we're frozen in our tracks like a deer in headlights, that is different. But when God has us in a waiting pattern, there is what the Bible calls a peace that passes all understanding. And in patience, possess ye your souls, is what the Bible says. Means you'll have a good handle on your mind, will, and emotions. So that means we got to do some introspection. And that's the hard part. People are afraid. One of the most fearful journeys people take, I say all the time, is the journey within. To look at myself, to think about me, to think
mm.
about, well, I do have to let this go to go here and this, that, and the other. And I try to please everybody, but you can't do that. The Bible says actually, woe unto you when all speak well of you. I mean,
Yes.
it's a problem if everybody agrees with you. So you got to have some goodbyes to have some
Absolutely.
hellos. So when I'm frozen in anxiety, then that is the stagnation of indecision. But when I have standing still, I have a peace. Isn't that what the Lord told Moses? Stand still and see the salvation
See.
of the Lord. I'm between a rock and a hard place, but I'm standing still because God told me to stand still. And I don't know how he's going to get me out of this. Pharaoh is behind me, the sea is before me. I don't know how he's going to get me out of this, but I got peace with it because somehow, actually, God told him, what are you crying to me for? Why are you having this grief reaction when you should be at peace? That's actually the text. He says, because this is not stagnation, this is standing still
Wow.
to let me move.
Mm,
And you don't have to know how I'm gonna move. That's hard for those of us that have been through a little bit of education because we want to figure it out and we want to have 7 steps before we make a step. But now you're in the realm of faith. Now you're in the realm where you got to trust God and move forward. As Dr. King said, faith is taking the first step when you don't see the rest of the staircase. And that's the difference between being stagnant and between waiting and standing still and waiting on the Lord, from the spiritual or the theological component. Dr. Shepard, feel free chime into that question if you'd like.
amen. I don't have anything else to add, sir. I concur with what you have said.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. So thank you, Sister Winfield. I'm thinking because of my musical background, your first name is Aida. That's the name of the opera anyway. Thank you so much for your kind words, and we're praying for you. And may the Lord continue to give you clarity of spirit and mind as you make the decisions you need to make. And again, be open to the voice of God. God doesn't listen, and I'll close with this, and then Dr. Shepherd can close us out. God, when you're waiting to hear from God to make a decision, the Bible says, "In all your ways, acknowledge Him." So here, in this Christian psychology approach that we're taking, it's a prayer is part of the consultation part of the four C's. Catharsis, get it all out. That's David again. Many are they that triumph over me. Many are they that rise up against me. Many are they that say there is no help for him in God. That not my enemies triumph over me. Lord, my haters are many. That's all in the Psalms. But then he says, "But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory and the lifter." So that's part of the consultation process. And be open that God may speak through forums like this. God may speak through children out of the mouth of babes. Don't limit God to one language. If we learn anything about the day of Pentecost that is about to come on us, God has multiple languages, and yet the Spirit speaks
Absolutely.
expressly. He's always talking. So we have to incline our hearts and ears to hear what He's saying as we make these decisions. And once we make them, we got to trust it. God gives information on a need to know basis. And then, even if you make a mistake, motive matters to God. God, my intention was
Mm-hmm.
to do right.
Mm-hmm.
And then watch
Mm-hmm.
God's grace make the difference. That's how I would close out this afternoon. Dr. Shepherd?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Bishop. So as you were talking, and you just actually helped me to formulate kind of my closing arguments, because one of my prayers that I pray typically when I give presentations is, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer." But then I have also been listening, and one of my, again, really one of my favorite verses, but Todd Delaney sings a song about Proverbs 3, and you just reference to it: "To trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct thy paths." People, I know we are going through, and a lot of people say that kind of as in a cliche, but truthfully, as even I was talking to one of my ministerial colleagues this morning, and they were just saying that they wish that they could have woken up today and this would have all been over. But unfortunately, it is not over. But let's just know that even though this is not over, that we serve a God who is still over all of this. He is still in control. And as you're going through, I know that so many of you all out there have lost jobs. You've been furloughed. Your your resources have been drying up. You haven't been able to make ends to meet. And I know you're making some tough decisions even right now, even regarding your own children. Whether or not do you go to work, to leave the children at home. Parents are frustrated about what's even due now that school has officially ended for this academic year. And I just saw again another article where parents are overwhelmed, they're fed up, and they're trying to make decisions on how to make sure that their child is getting a adequate education. These are all serious decisions. And I want you to know that we are concerned about you. God is concerned about you. And as you're making your decisions, as Bishop Robinson has already stated, there may not necessarily be a right decision, but God is going to look at your motives. Don't allow yourself to get stuck. That is the thing that we want to tell people today. Man, I'm getting encouraged even as I speak. You don't want to get encouraged. I'm sorry, you don't want to get stagnant. You don't want to get stuck. You want to be encouraged to move forward. I've been telling people Stop binging and let's start moving. What do I mean by that? Stop sitting idle in the house and just binging on these movies. And I know, it's been 2 months now. You should have seen all the movies that you need to see by now. It's time to let's get a little bit active. Let's put some of these things to play. Let's see how we can take it to the next level, whatever those goals are. And as you're making these decisions right now, know that there are people out there who are genuinely concerned about you, but ultimately God is concerned about you. And so let's make these moves, and let's make sure that they're God-centered moves and not something that we're just thinking irrationally or just in a rush to do. I hope that this has helped you today. I'm sure we're going to talk about more decisions. We got some major decisions that come ahead. I got to decide how I'm going to continue to see patients. Bishop, he's a Passover church. He has to decide how the church is going to be able to reopen. And we got to figure out, how do we listen to our governmental officials who are saying one thing over here and somebody else is saying something over there. So this is a time where we really want to help hone in and center ourselves so that we can move forward, move forward with caution, not necessarily in a state of panic or fear, but let's hopefully that this is bringing some resolution to some of that panic and fear so that we can open up our eyes and see as clearly as possible so that we can be the best people that God has called for us to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. And listen, if this has been a blessing to you, please continue to share it. We'll be here every Saturday at 12 noon. We are committed
Yes.
to this moment. And thank you for joining us. Please feel free to also reach out to us. Dr. Shepherd?
Yes. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. Happy
Yes.
Mother's Day to my mother if she's watching there in
Happy
Chicago. So happy Mother's Day to everybody out there.
Happy Mother's Day. Wonderful. Yes, happy Mother's Day. And thank you, Winfield, Minister Hill, Evans, everybody, Baker, Bernie Gatling. Thank you for joining us. And please tell somebody, share what God is doing every Saturday at noon here on Spirit in Mind.